Hey everyone, Marcus here from the Ashland Fly Shop. Earlier we tied a little traditional fly for steelhead in our area, and right now we're going to do a little stinger type fly that it works a little bit better under the sink tip. And really in the Rogue we find these flies, like what I'll show you, really to be the most productive throughout the summer around here. So we're going to start off with the Aquafly's round eye shank, and this is the 33 millimeter. Kind of my favorite length by far. It just makes it, you have enough room on this shank to build 2 stations if you want. I most commonly will just do 1 station, but there's really a lot of versatility in this size shank. We're going to start at the top with a hot orange thread, and this is a 140 count hot orange Danville thread. Just wrap towards the back. I've got the Senyo intruder wire rigged up to the Aqua Talon size 2 microbarb hook, and really you'll just leave it based on how long you want the fly in general. This fly I try to make a little bit shorter than some of my other ones, so it's just hanging back there a little ways. And we'll wrap up to really just where we're going to start to prop the fly. And the one thing that does is it gives you a nice, consistent, even body instead of having a big bulky front or a bulky back. And I just like to pull a couple times on that in case you hook a big one. So we're going to use black holographic Flashabou for the body on this fly, and I usually just take a couple strands and clip them even at the top, and then just lay them the length of your body and tie them in just so that they're not overhanging very much. And then you can just leave them back like so. And then on top of that, we'll use ultra wire medium silver, which is kind of my most common thing to lay over these guys. And we don't need that much. And that too will just lay along the length of that body. Come to just the front of it there. Pull it so it's just a nice flat line and start to wrap forward. Just making sure you'll see that thread under there if you miss any spots. That's the nice thing about wrapping with a bright colored thread. Just come to the front of the body there. And then tie it off. And we will clip these and actually use them for later in the fly. Really the best way I've found to keep them is just to put them in your hackle pliers and then save them for later. And then we'll wrap the wire on top there. Just nice consistent wraps. For a prop on this fly, one of my favorite props to use is just deer hair. You'll just grab a pretty considerable chunk of it here, especially because I don't use a comb much anymore, but you just kind of twist the hair in your hand and pull away a lot of that under fur. It'll just give your prop a little bit cleaner look. You won't see all that fuzz in there. And then we'll pop it in the hackle plier, or in the hackle stacker. And I just trim to the length. I like it at least to be around the length of the body on this fly. And then it's all trimmed down. Just lay it on top of the shank, one soft wrap, another soft wrap, And then if you just pull straight down, and as it comes around, you just chase it, and you go around in a slow circle, and then you pull down. And that is really the best way to wrap it. And then you just come through those fibers, and it's secure, it's not going anywhere. On top of that, we're going to lay just a couple strands of that black Flashabou. I'm not a big fan of really flashy flies, but I do think a couple strands on either side helps the fly get seen a little bit. Just kind of pull all those back and give a couple wraps on top there. On top of that, we'll have really as much ostrich as you'd like. This is the MFC stuff. It's really fine, kind of takes more strands to give it that ostrich fly look. So I'll lay about 4 or 5 on top of the fly. Secure them down there. Often I do spin ostrich quite a bit, but this really fine MFC stuff tends, for me at least, to be a little bit more difficult to spin than some of the wider ostrich out there. So I'm just going to lay it in chunks along here. And if you do, you can kind of curl them around the shank and lay a soft wrap, and they will pull around the shank, and then you can just secure them. And I'll just do a couple wraps on top of all those to make sure they're not going anywhere. And on top of that, we'll have just a couple wraps of Marabou, peeling away all the really thick stuff at the base. And this too is just about how big you want this fly to look in the water. This one I'm going to do a little sparser than some of the other ones I've done. Kind of work down into the Marabou. Really just working with maybe 1 inch of Marabou on each side. Tie it in from the tip. Just wrap it. Make sure none of those fibers are getting caught in there. And that starts to give it that kind of classic umbrella look that we look for. Tie in that stem. I'm not going to wrap back on the Marabou at all, just so it stays nice and springy like that. For a collar, I'm going to use black saddle, and I'm going to try to pick one of the bigger ones in here, one of the more webby feathers, because the area of the feather that I'm actually going to use is going to be right here at the base, some of this really furry stuff. I just like the look that it has on this fly. So I'm going to tie this guy in. And this will just help build some bulk into the collar of this fly. And it's kind of, this color combo, a little bit boring, but all black with an orange head, year in, year out, is pretty tough to beat. Just pull all those fibers back. Grab that stem. and tie it off. And on top of that, I'm actually going to put a decent size jungle cock eye on each side. And this is a material that's been pretty tough to get for a while. But it really, the thing I like about it, it just adds, especially in a fly like this where there's not contrast in the colors of the body. It just kind of makes the fly more visible from quite a ways away, having a good size jungle cock eye on each side. So the best way I've found to do this is just lay the vise up on its side and really try to get that as flat as you can. You'll know right away if it's going to lay down awkwardly, because you'll see it start to fray out. Just a couple wraps on top there, and then we'll bring the vise to the opposite side. Tie this guy in. One kind of loose wrap, see, like that one. Anytime you get that, just start over, because you do not want a feather like this to be laying awkwardly on there. Couple slow wraps, getting right back to where that collar stops. And you can just see it just adds a focal point to the top of the fly there, kind of the first third of the fly. And then I'm just going to build ahead. Nice thing about using thread like this, it's practically like putting a little cone on there. Unweighted, you can cast it on a Scandi line if you want, under a light sink tip, heavy sink tip, however you want to fish it. But it's unweighted, so it'll swim through the skinniest water without hanging up, which is a really nice thing. And I'll just do a couple whip finishes there. Looks like my thread kind of got uncoiled there, so I'll wrap it above it. I'll give it another whip finish. Main thing with the head like this is just make sure that you're covering all of those stem fibers so that none of it shows through, so it just looks nice and bright orange. And then I'll grab the loon hard head. This one's big enough to just use the brush without using a bobbin. And just cover all sides of the fly, giving it a nice clear head there. If you get it dripping, you can kind of come in with the bodkin, smooth it out, take some of it away. And poke an eye in there. So that is our little stinger fly. That, geez, I would fish any day of the year here on the Rogue. One of the last fish I landed was on a fly pretty much just like this, all black with a little hot head at the top, totally unweighted, with a nice big collar there. Gives it a little bit of bulk in the water, but it's still really easy to cast. So thank you for tuning in. That's a little Rogue River stinger pattern. Thank you.